Good afternoon, folks. We'll get started in a minute here. Wait for a few more people to pop on. All right, good morning, folks. How's everybody doing? If everybody would be so kind as to hit the chat button there and give us a good morning, tell us where you're from, what part of the planet you are, what you're doing. I see Emil just popped up. I see our friend Emil from Naples just popped up. I want you to know, Emil, that behind me, our media device has Naples on it, not Fontainebleau. So I hope that makes you happy. Got our friends from Telluride back from yesterday, and it's still the FBO with the best view on the planet. I don't know. Somebody's gonna have to prove otherwise. And we got our fair share of Irish representation with Mr. Cunningham, Mr. McBride, Mr. McDermott, Mr. Wiley. So I'm going to get the ball rolling here. My name's Jim Wiley. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of X1. Our webinar today is about something that's been a long time in coming. It changes in how we as FBOs, we as ground handlers, just the general aviation, business aviation space in general. We've been pretty static for a pretty long time in how we do things, and you know, we watched the world change a lot around us, and that's what we're going to talk about today, about how the FBOs can adapt to some of the technologies available and how it's beneficial, and why, you know, moving us into the next phase of our industry is going to be beneficial to everybody. So, oh yeah, I like our next slide. Thank you, Monica. Mr. McBride, who was leaving on the call, may have been the one to take this picture a million years ago when I first started as a line guy in. Well, this was at DB Aviation in Chicago. I started at Priester. I started at Priester Aviation as a line service tech in, I want to say, '95, I think it was. When I started as a line guy, Andy Priester, who's the guy that runs the whole company right now, was the groundskeeper. His dad had him weed whacking and mowing lawns. And now he's running the company. We're sitting here trying to change aviation in general. It's cool stuff. I started as like I said, a line guy in Chicago. I went from there up to Waukegan, Illinois, where this picture was taken. And I was very lucky in my career that I got to go to a lot of places and do a lot of different things. I spent the vast majority of my time in the FBO business, but I did get to do a little time in ground handling on the airline side. I ran a GSC shop at LaGuardia for a while. I did a short stint at a charter company. I mean, I got very, very lucky in my career, and I got to see a lot of different things in a lot of different places. This is, from New York to Chicago, New Orleans, down there in Louisiana, still one of my favorite places to live. Here in Florida, South Carolina, and then for the last couple of years, I was with Landmark before it became part of Signature, and I got to do what we call transitions. When we bought a new location, we'd go to those new locations and we'd help switch them over, and it was an education that you can't buy. I mean, you really got to see how people did things all over the place, good and bad, and after all these years of doing this, watching very little change. When I started as a line guy in the 90s at Priester, we used to have these little index cards. We'd fill out the index cards. We'd write on the back of them what was going out, what was coming in. We'd take frequent trips to the other side of the airport to update them because they change. A lot of that hasn't, and it's funny because it really hasn't changed. I mean, the big change now is that somebody might print it out from a system. They might take a printout on a piece of paper and walk out the door instead of handwriting it with a pen. Our truck sheets back then, we filled them all out with, Priester was great. We weren't allowed to use a pencil. Everything had to be in pen. It was like our audit trail. So if you screwed up the truck sheet, it was clear as day you screwed up the truck sheet, and you have to either fix it or rewrite it. I remember when I first started, I took drafting in high school, so I kept that drafter's handwriting my entire life. First time I ever handed in a truck sheet at Priester, I thought the front desk was gonna kiss me because they could actually read my writing. And that hasn't changed much either in the course of all these years we've been doing this. What's funny is we also, even back then, we had the ability to collect payments on the ramp. It was a knuckle cruncher. We would go with our little, that carbon copy paper, put it in a thing, clunk, clunk, and then bring it into the front desk to get the invoices paid. We actually lost that ability over the past couple of years. But in general, this industry as a whole has just, if you would have put me on a ramp today to do the same thing I did 20 years ago, it is quite literally the same exact thing. There is almost no difference in how we run our businesses today than we did 20 years ago. If you're lucky, you might get you might have a truck with an electronic meter, those are great because again, line guy handwriting, line guys and doctors have a lot in common. Yet nothing else on the ramp has changed in that same amount of time. The way we do things, and what's weird is our businesses have become much more complex to run. We don't have the same. Years ago, I never wore hearing protection. I'm half deaf now because of it, but it wasn't even part of the rules. Just things like that, things we've learned as an industry over time that we've implemented. Regulation has become more complex. Our equipment has become more complex. And we still do things the exact same way. And we think that there's opportunity to change that. We think there's opportunity to make, to bring some of this technology to the ramp. And we got a lot of people on today. They're going to talk about that, even from their perspectives, from that equipment perspective, from what the pilots are expecting to see us do. There's a generational shift going on and it's across, it's not just on the pilot side, it's across our entire industry. There are, an older generation is moving out of positions of decision making. Younger pilots are moving into the cockpits, and that's having a big impact on driving, why we need to change some of these things that we're doing. I mean, the fact we still have truck sheets, you look at some of how this works today versus how it worked then. I mean, the stuff that companies like Total Control Systems and Liquid Controls are doing with their electronic registers is fantastic. But then, 80% of the time we're still on the go. Somebody's still writing that number down somewhere to create a ticket to give to somebody, or to put into handoff, or better yet, it goes over the radio to somebody. We've leveraged what we're trying to do from the X1 side of things. We're trying to leverage the technology that other people are putting out there. People like Total Control Systems. We've developed a modem that connects the TCS registers, or the Liquid Controls IQ registers as well, that can actually talk to the register. So instead of just the register blindly sending information out, we're actually saving the steps of that line service tech having to fill in the information on the register. We're confirming things like additive coming directly from the originator. I mean, think about that. That's a bit of a holy grail in aviation. The fact that your fuel order is not going through 10 people to get to the guy who's actually doing it. We can actually receive a fuel order from a system like we have a system called X1 Single Point. We also have connections to things like FlightBridge. That person who's creating the fuel order, when they create it, that same exact fuel order is going to show up in the device in the truck for that guy to action with the same information. So we don't have the telephone game. We're going to help prevent incorrect fueling amounts. Then there's also the fact, this technology can be leveraged to create something that we've had an issue with as an industry for way, way too long. Things like misfuelings. Something Mike's going to talk about when he comes up. The fact that to this day, we still put the wrong fuel in an airplane and risk somebody's life doing it. And there's ways we can leverage technology to help that. Now, the big question is really for us, why are we still here? Why as an industry have we not taken these steps? Why isn't it? You look at the world around us, and a lot of things have changed. There's some factors in our industry that in my opinion, are at play here. As to why we haven't kept up with the technology around us. One of the big ones is that the industry itself is risk averse, and we have good reason to be risk averse. I mean, you've heard I guarantee most of you have heard the term that most of our regulations are written in blood. People have died in order to create the rules that we follow today to prevent it from happening again. So as a culture, our industry is risk averse, and that risk averseness, it translates to more than just the safety aspect of it. It's universal in our industry. And risk tolerance has changed drastically since the days of the Wright brothers. I mean, it's different than it was then. Most places, most people don't have the same level of risk tolerance. And it goes back to what I said, because a lot of it was written in blood, especially the early regulations that make up what we call aviation today. I mean, think about even our name. We're talking about the FBO industry, fixed base operator. Our name goes back to the very dawn of aviation, when the guys in the fuel truck decided to hold still and let the airplanes come to them. It's that kind of mentality that that drives the difficulty for us as an industry to change. I think about it. There have been more than a few attempts to change what we call ourselves in an industry. There's a reason we still call ourselves the FBO industry and not the ASO industry, despite all those efforts. And then. Again, going back to the world around us, people in general are not big fans of change. Change is difficult. It introduces uncertainty. People don't like uncertainty. And then is the comfort. I mean, look at the world around us. Look at aviation. We still have paper fuel releases. I mean, we may be fancy and it might be an email now. But the very idea that an authorization for credit is a document is archaic. How many people pay their bills today with even a check, no less a piece of paper that's an authorization for credit? It's a weird concept. And one of the things we're doing is trying to modernize that side of the industry too. let me ask. I'm gonna ask a quick poll question here. How many of us have ever paid for a product with an app? At some point in the past, year, have used an app to pay for a product? I'll give it a minute for everybody to pop in some answers, and I'll pop them up on the screen. So the vast majority of us at this point on this call have used an app to pay for something. Now, just 2 years ago, Chase Payment Tech said this wouldn't happen until the late part of this decade. Obviously, there's been a global pandemic and some other things to help drive this, but it's a symptom of the fact that change is continuing to accelerate. The last part of our change is something I touched on briefly a minute ago, is that it's generational. There's a part of our industry, we have an older industry, our leadership is older than average across multiple industries, but it's changing at a rapid pace. It's changing faster than other industries because we do skew older. So that change for us is not going to be as gradual as it has been in other industries. We're going to see a change that's fast, that drives people to a much quicker change in who's managing, who's making decisions, and what their expectations are of those. Expectations are a huge part of this. There's just going to be a huge difference in what people think something should do today versus what the previous generation thought before. The older leadership is making way for the new leadership is basically the moral of that story. And that's happening overall as a country. Our demographics are changing. According to Pew, our millennials have surpassed Generation X as the most represented generation in our workforce, especially our workforce. Our workforce on the younger end, the entry-level end, skews much, much more towards millennials, and now Generation Z is in that workforce. I'm going to ask one more question about this because it's kind of interesting, and I'm going to talk about something we did when the brief time I was with Signature. We did a generational thing at one of our meetings, and it was about how the generations handle and think of things differently, and it's very, very informative. And what, Generation X, who is in a lot of these decision-making positions now, has a better understanding of the technology and its capabilities. It is not the same as millennials and Generation Z. They don't have an understanding of the technology and how it can impact their day-to-day life. They have an expectation of how to use technology day-to-day and how it's going to impact their life. And I'll pop this up. This matches really what we're seeing across the board as the workforce. That actually worked out pretty well because we're seeing Generation X is in those decision-making positions today. We see the millennials are starting to move into those positions, and Generation Z entering the workforce. Interesting. Let me skip a slide here. So, I'm gonna introduce Mr. Jeff Corsi. Jeff is a pilot and the founder of PJP, a large group of pilots that have done a great job of communicating each other. It's there's such an advantage to that discussion in our industry because we're such a small group. Jeff, we're talking about these generations. Jeff is going to tell us what, Jeff is pretty representative of what these new pilots expect and what they want to see from an FBO, what they want to see from the technology. So Jeff's going to, tell you why PJP was created, and then go into some of what the expectations are from an FBO and what would make his life easier from our service perspective. How can we make Jeff's life easier? How can we make the job of the pilot easier? And there's a lot of easy answers to this, but there's some that are, the answer might be easy. The execution might be a little difficult. But Jeff, I'll let you take it away and discuss what you do and what we can do for you.
What's up, guys? Nice to meet you all. I'm Jeff Corsi. I run PJP. It's a Facebook group, and it's been slowly growing over the past few years. Its attrition rate is about, I'd say a couple thousand people a year, and it's pulling in people from all over our aviation industry, from FBO managers, pilots, operators, flight attendants, engineers, executives, money managers that have something to do with the airplane. It's a great diverse group, but everybody is aviation centric. The great part about it is it's social. If you've ever watched Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, when they get to pull a lifeline, they have an option that says audience participation. You can see everybody votes like a poll, and usually 100% of the time that answer is correct. So that's what we're able to get out of this social PJP, and it's been a great tool for the industry. We've used all the features that Facebook has to offer to our benefit for growth, for searching, for talking, all the drama that's in there. It's just been such a great little core group. So if you want to join it, go ahead and join it. We'll get you guys added in there. See you guys there on the right side. I get messages all the time from people seeing like a post that'll start. Like if you remember about a while back, I think it was last year up in Teterboro, some FBO guy called the cops on a couple bottles of Perrier. And that thing just went around the world. I mean, Signature, I think it started at Signature, but they were like, we need to get this off PJP quick. That kind of fun stuff. But it's an FBO eye opener of how fast things can start and go. That's what's cool about PJP. Plus, we're able to use the platform for a lot of good. A lot of guys get work out of it. We're able to get information such as those things, complaints out of it. How can we do things better? The crew car complaints, pilot gripes. We're the guys in the trench, right? So we're all a key component in this whole industry. Somebody's got to fly the plane, somebody's got to manage, somebody's got to wash, somebody's got to fuel, somebody's got to park, somebody's got this. So there's all of us are digits on this hand or members of this one body. We all really want to advance and do a good job. It's one of the only industries where you have to be perfect. You have to do a good job 100% of the time. Pilots are like, oh, so-and-so crashed today, so-and-so crashed today. No, 100% of the time we have to get from origin to destination. So it's a very critical job. Pilots who are flying in it become critical people. And we become critical and cynical, and we're hoping and we're analyzing and pressing on the FBOs because we're stuck to this high standard and this high calling. And then when you have to deal with services that feel like they're not, it's you get this constant battle. I don't know if you guys seen those YouTube videos of the I'm a Learjet captain. Well, that stuff does annoy the crap out of me. But it was this pilot, overbearing pilot, wants everything for free, wants to try to save the boss money. And we finally were able to overcome those dynamics of everybody understanding like it's a relationship-based business industry. We all survive and thrive off of each other. So the better the outcome is, the better our outcome is together as a whole. I think X1 is doing a fabulous job with finally taking us from out of the Stone Age. Like you were talking about your paper slips. That stuff should have been done 10 years ago. But as you all know, aviation is 10 years behind. Even the equipment that we're putting in the airplane and tapping with is 10 years old. The Garmin stuff that we're scrolling and knobbing, 10 years old. The new cockpits that are all side sticks and awesome. Side sticks have been out for how long? 10 years. Cirrus been side sticks for 10 years. So it's the certification, and it's also the pulling of teeth to try to get people to have like a forward thinking. It's like, do you invest in stocks? It's like you either believe in a company and believe what they're going to do and realize it's going to have some highs and lows. You either got paper hands or diamond hands, and you believe, hey, the industry is going to go this way, and you're somebody that's on board or you're somebody that's in the way. Or I like to say you're either a doer or a don't. And the doers don't get along with the don'ts. and the don'ts want to attack the doers because the doers are doing what they won't. Little Vanilla Ice raps and rhymes there. So let me wrap this whole hamburger up, put the bun on top of this baby, and give it to you. Is X1 is doing the dirty work that the don'ts want to do. They're pushing a product that I think is ahead of its time, but probably it's right on time because we need it. But it's ahead of its time in everybody else's mindset. And when they start to see it, what they want to do is, instead of jump on and join in and be a part of it, they probably want they want to snatch somebody, like, how can we kind of advance this way? And my hope for this meeting, for this project, for X1, is that every single FBO in the planet sees what a great product this is and jumps on full on board, because the communication part of it, the social part of it, the connection part of it, the services part of it, all these things are what we've been looking for and needing. When I pull up, I want to be able to quickly shoot out a text, tell them what my fuel order is, tell them I need the lab service done, tell them I need this done, this, that, and know that it's going to be complied with just the same way I have to comply with it. Before I take off, I'm going to have run all my checklists. I'm going to have accomplished my walk around. I'll make sure my passengers have everything they need. I will do that without saying. I need FBOs to also do that without saying. And that takes, it's going to take a movement like this. Like X1 is a movement, with everybody getting behind this movement and supporting the movement, and the industry accepting it and stop fighting. They need to get over their old archaic softwares. As sad as this might sound, the biggest blocker I've had when meeting people and trying to move something is they have somebody that they hired. This is their CTO or whoever the person is that's in this company, but they're limited. So they're going to take their whole business and they're going to limit it on this one person who is running this one piece. Sometimes it hurts to cut weight, but you got to cut that weight sometimes and let your company advance beyond the Stone Age and into where we are. We're in 2021 and we're moving into 22 fast. It's coming like this. We need software. We need to just zip it. When I go to the hotel, if I need towels, I text Marriott, give me that. Hotel show up at my door 4 or 5 minutes later. I'm expecting that. The rest of the world is like that. I order my pizza on an app, shows up at my house. I don't even go to, my son likes Brooklyn Water Bagels. I go on a DoorDash, type it in, 30 minutes later, it's at my front door. At first you think 30 minutes, but then you realize I'm getting so much more done during that 30 minutes. And it's the same thing we're missing in the cockpit and in the airplane. I can be getting so much more done if I know that I can rely on the FBO. I can rely on them if I'm getting, read and write text responses that, hey, they received my fuel order, they're doing it. 2, the fuel order's been confirmed, the uplift amount's been confirmed. Comforting this. The other day in the Phenom, I had an FBO. We'll leave it off the table, but they left my fuel latches on and closed the fuel door. We were in a rush, cranked up, the other guy's flying, and we didn't see the little X's on the fuel panel in the dash. The dash got a ton of glass there, but we didn't see the little X's on there. We take off, and as soon as we get the gear up, all of a sudden it says we have 0 fuel. That catches your attention. You're like, oh crap. So these little tiny details of like, how did we miss that, man? Well, it's raining out. 2, we maybe skipped over that item on the checklist. It never says check to see if your fuel switches were on. It's something that you walk around and do, and you don't expect the FBO to sabotage you. Thank God I had Wi-Fi and a cell phone, but I called the FBO and I got they were closed now, so I had to get them forwarded to another guy. I finally got the fuel on the phone. I said, confirm to me how many gallons you put in the airplane, because I was keeping it light because we were going from Florida to Florida, and I had landed light, was going to land light where I'm going. So he says, no, it's confirmed. You got 350 gallons. I was like, how do I know that I have the 350 gallons? He's like, I'm telling you, sir, I put it in there myself. I said, okay, well, I think you left the fuel switches open. It would have been really cool to have a text note confirmation that I got this in there, that I've got the fuel. But when I landed, it was another one of those reminders of like, I even got to double check and triple check that stuff. So now I open up that fuel panel, check those latches, checking those things. It's that one little gotcha in aviation that the chain starts. We always talk about breaking the chain. So you look at that big picture. He was a part of my flight. If I didn't have that fuel in that airplane, I was going to have a different course of action, because I would have right there declared an emergency. I would have had to go put the airplane down somewhere and go put fuel in it, because I don't know how much fuel I have. So those are the things that I believe that this software is going to revolutionize the industry with, is confirmations. Is my lab dumped? Yes. Is my catering here? Yes. Even pre-notifications. We love notifications. right? So catering's arrived. This is here. That's there. I'd also like to send more information to the FBOs. Like, for instance, when my passengers show up, sometimes they leave them trapped sitting at a gate for 30 minutes. My guy's sitting out there trying to get the car, and he's got a car loaded with bags, and I can't get a guy to go pop the gate. That makes me look bad, and that's where you get those Learjet pilots that are standing at your counter pounding on stuff like, hey, we need you to do this, is because people dropped the balls, or we left the bag there at your FBO, and now they can't find the bag that we left the FBO. We put a tag on it. It was given to David. It went here. I mean, you got to go back so much. The technology that X1 is building is going to bridge that gap. And if every FBO starts to jump on board like that, we're going to start to see the difference that it makes by being basically having a checklist. It's another form of a checklist that people can rely on. So, Jim, thanks for dude, thank you so much for doing all this hard work. You've been working on this thing for years. We've been talking about this for years. You put a heck of a software suite together. I'm behind you all the way, man. I'm going to push and ride this wave because I see what it's going to do for me, and I've been to FBOs where it's working. It's a night and day difference, and I want to be able to have that same experience when I'm traveling around the world. I can rely on that.
Thanks, man. That's greatly appreciated. What Jeff's talking about, and what I kept hearing from Jeff was information. It's information, and everybody having access to that same information. It's and the fact that his fueling was done. Jeff actually sent me a text message the other day. He was at a very busy FBO. He had placed his fuel order, and it had been a while. He saw they were busy. He texted me that he was walking back to the airplane, and he was willing to bet me that the aircraft didn't have fuel. And he would know that if that's one of the things we want to get with our system is to the point where that information we fed back to the pilot. They don't have to do that double check. They don't have to guess. It's the information and the data and everybody reading from the same page that is going to make life easier for guys like Jeff, my good friend, Mr. McBride, who's on the call. Those guys, they have a different set of pressures than we do as the FBO. And they're our customer at the end of the day. It's our job to help them get to that point. Why has aviation failed to meet these expectations and these changes? What's the change? Why did we miss that? I'm going to pick on some people here a little bit. From the software perspective, from the technology perspective, as FBOs, we've relied on freeware from suppliers for decades. And when that software is heavily subsidized or free, or when any solution is heavily subsidized or free, it's going to suffer from a lack of innovation. And that's what we've seen in the industry. We're getting something we pay little or nothing for, and well, guess what? You get little or nothing for what you pay for. That that model won't work anymore. That's the reason we're here. That's the reason we've been successful, is because we're able to invest. We're able to talk to the pilots, the FBOs. Our software is constantly changing to match those requirements, the changing view that people have. A bike may get me from point A to point B, which some of the old software does. I mean, the old software, I'll call out TFBO. I used TFBO for 20 years. It did what it did very, very well for a very, very long time. But the technology around us has surpassed it, and that's where our opportunity came from. I was about to say, a bicycle will get me from point A to point B. It'll work fine, but a car does it much, much more efficiently and faster. What I just mentioned about the technology being behind, being subsidized and free, that's got us to the point where aviation is struggling to even understand some of the technology and how it can help them on the ramp and how it can help them run their operations. There's a famous quote that's attributed to Henry Ford, that if you ask someone how to improve transportation in the later part of the 19th century, they would have told you faster horses. Well, we know what happened in the early part of the 20th century, the advent of the car. But the average person, the average farmer, the average person living in a city in the end of the 19th century, that was not in their scope. They didn't, it's not something they thought of. It was up to the doers, as Jeff said, to come up with a car and now we have the faster, easier transportation. The same thing with our industry. Another, I'll go back to the data. Every one of these components, the hand that Jeff was talking about, is all data points in our entire aviation ecosystem. And technology across the board can help us as a business solve these problems and make life easier for everybody in the system. Whether it's, we're going to talk to Mike later about the NAT QC app, getting that information, that data. We have Rod who's going to talk to us about some technology on the tugs, and what everybody's solutions are doing is adding information that we can use to do our jobs better. And it's going to take systems. It's going to take technology. It's going to take people. I'll shout out Atlantic too. Atlantic's system that's their internal system does a great job. It has apps. It does a lot of this data collection to feed its staff and employees information like what we're doing with our system, and that is going to grow in importance. I think about
Jim. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
That's the problem with these big guerrilla corporations. They see there's money in private aviation. They want to make that fuel money. They want to make those little ancillary services money, but yet they're not going to jump on board to help us actually run our business. And if you notice, all they do is they grow it big and then they sell it to somebody else. So that's what we're fighting against. The knotheads that are working there that are this giant gorilla in the room.
That's actually very, very interesting that you say that, because I think you're going to see the consolidation continue. But we've recently seen both Atlantic and Signature switch hands to companies that are not necessarily the buy and sell type. They're more infrastructure partners that are looking to own these companies long term. Atlantic has always been one of those groups. So, and which I also think speaks to why Atlantic's system is so well built, because Atlantic was owned previously by an infrastructure fund, which has a much longer term view than private equity. And they ended up with a system that is much, much better than any other proprietary system out in the industry. And I think what I think is that you'll see some of those changes coming with these companies in the very near future. I mean, we know Atlantic is heavy on technology. Signature has been working on that kind of stuff. So, and it obviously, as we continue to expand and we offer tools like our flight tracking tool and stuff like that, we hope to be able to help them expand on those capabilities and do more for the average pilot. And, I think you're going to see some improvements there over what you've seen in the past, especially with the recent changes. Now, how can we make these changes in aviation? What do we have to do? Well, one of the most basic things that we can do is become, I mean, I say it, but it's a lot harder to do than it is to say. As an industry, we've always been very reactive. When we're asked for something, we do it. We don't anticipate. Think about going to a restaurant, and when you put your drink down on the counter, it's almost done. The waitress comes by, swipes it, and drops a new one. I love that. That's great. She anticipated my need and had that drink there before I even finished it. That's fantastic. We don't do that in general as an industry. We don't have the lab cart sitting there necessarily, even when they've told us they needed a lab. We have what we call the X1 single point app, which puts that all the information, that data we're talking about, all that data collection in the hands of the line service technician on the ramp. So he can open up his device, see everything that's going on. One of the coolest things we did with that app was we built what we called a summary view of a request. A request in X1 is an arrival or departure. So and I've told the story so many times now, when as an FBO industry, what happens when we get the phone call from the dispatcher, right? Or somebody will tell us that Jeff's Phenom is coming. They need this, this, and this. Jeff may call later on and get his rental car and give you his rewards numbers and tell you what he needs when he gets there, or ask for the crew car. Jeff will probably call in 15 minutes out before they land and follow up on those same requests to make sure that the owner's car is there and fill in any last minute details that he needs. Yet, almost every single time, and pop this in the chat. Tell me what the answer is. What is the first thing the line service technician says when the door to the aircraft opens? What do you need? What can we get you? How can we help you? Welcome to our FBO. Now, the issue there is that Jeff and his team have already told us 3 times. That is one of the things we want to change. We want to make it so that instead of what can we get you, when that door opens on that summary screen on our device, what we've done is we've taken all those services, condensed them, and put a little bit of text. So basically, the line service tech or concierge, whatever it is, greeting the aircraft, can just read it. They can say, hey, Jeff, I see you guys needed 450 gallons negative. You had a rental car for the owner. It's right here. We have a crew car behind the airplane as soon as you guys are ready, and you guys wanted some hangar space tonight. Anything else I can get you? Holy crap. It's that easy. You can actually physically watch a pilot relax at the door when that is the answer instead of what can I get you? And that takes the technology. That's where the technology is starting to connect everybody in that ecosystem to the same ideas, to the same information. We're trying to do this across the board. We're not just trying to do this with on the ramp with the app. We're trying to do this. We're trying to get that same information. The way we've always kind of viewed this is the FBO is the hub of this whole entire ecosystem. At some point, all of this stuff, whether it's the safety component, whether it's equipment, whether it's the aircraft, whether it's the pilots, the fuel suppliers, all of it has to go through the FBO itself at some point. It's the center of our ecosystem. So it's a great place to start to aggregate that data and feed it out to all of those fingers on the hand, as Jeff said. And we're doing this in more ways than single point. We have a lot of ideas on how the industry and how, as FBOs, we can become more proactive and use these tools to do a better job. We've recently developed our own flight tracking solution called X1 Tracks. What is really, really cool about Tracks and what makes it different is that it's connected directly to your operational system. So when you look at your flight tracking screen, you see the aircraft, you see that aircraft then has a request in your system, and you see some of the details of that request. You can click on it and see more. In X1, which that part we have today, we're actually working on the next part here that I'm mentioning. In X1, we'll be able to automatically update all those times from your flight tracking solution. And what's going to happen with Tracks over time is we're going to add more and more tools to it, and we're going to morph Tracks into a bit of a CRM. So it's going to be a CRM because it has the ability to collect information. So we'll know how often that aircraft was there. We'll know how many times they took fuel. We'll know how much fuel they took. We know what their average margin was. We'll know if, loyalty, how many times it's been to our airport, how many times it's been to us at our airport, and start to make it easier for the FBOs to have these conversations with flight departments and operators to say, hey, I see you come to our airport a lot. What can we do for you? How can we help you? It can, even have a conversation. Tell us what you like about the other FBO and gain business. And again, it's all based on that data. And then, what we talked about before about feeding that information back out to the pilots and crews. One of the things I always think of, and, getting it past the pilot even at some point is something we're going to talk about in a little bit here, of even getting to the point where Grandpa, who's the passenger on our airplane today, knows that his granddaughter is sitting at the gate waiting for the airplane to taxi up to come greet him. That's the kind of information, and that changes the dynamic. That changes the whole experience at the FBO. And our call yesterday was about experience, and that's what's become important. You talk about millennials, they value experience more than a physical asset across the board. It's the way they think. And as companies, that's something we're going to need to embrace. And we embrace that through technology and having the information that they need to create those experiences. I'll give everybody a chance. Any questions on anything we just talked about here? Any questions for Jeff?
We need some Jeopardy music. Now, guys, talk up. This is a great forum to just find out about how each other works. If you got anything aviation related, I'm happy to answer it.
Or pilot expectation related. I mean, it's pilot expectation and younger pilot expectation, because there is a difference. There's somebody else that that has some apps and some data across this industry has given us some information that the use of these apps and how these systems are being interacted with today, the limited systems we do have available today, are sort of a barbell structure, where it's very clearly generational. You have a big group of the older generation that are low adopters, and then you have a really big group of the newer generation that are high adopters. And what's happening is this other group is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. So let's ask this question slightly differently. What kind of recurring issues do you have at your FBO? We have a question from Jason, who's a line guy extraordinaire out in the middle of the country.
Oh, I just saw the questions. They're in the chats. My bad.
Yeah, Jason's question is, where do you draw the line on the pilot responsibilities versus the FBO responsibilities? And that's actually a good question.
Me? Who's answering? You or me?
Well, I'll give my 2 cents, but please do jump in. My answer to that question is that it's really, I'm going to almost say that's situational, where it depends on what the services are and stuff like that. I mean, I can think of, and we'll go back to the customer service conversation from yesterday. I could think of a number of instances over the course of my career where a pilot may have dropped the ball. They may have missed something that we caught. For example, like, taxiing out with a fuel door open. They may have popped open the door to check the switches and left it open. And there's tons of other examples, but the FBO being proactive can help the pilot. The pilot being proactive can help the FBO. So I think there's that crosses over. But Jeff, please do jump in there.
Well, I've got a fun one for you. So I can tell you where the line is. I asked to have my helicopter pulled out because I had to go pick up Vanilla Ice real quick, and I waited. I'm calling. I'm like, guys, come on, pull this thing out. I gotta go. At that point, I didn't even have time for extra fuel, so you got to really think about where I got to stop somewhere, get some gas somewhere else. Anyway, it never showed up. I jumped on the tug, I hooked it up, and I pulled it out of the hangar, and I took off. Well, when I got back, I landed on it. They put it away, but the next day I got called into the FBO, found out that's outside their insurance. So that's, you find those, that I found the line there, basically overstepping. So anything that the FBO can do, they should do. And anything that the pilot can do, they should do. So they won't let me drive my own fuel truck, because sometimes there's FBOs where I would go get that truck and come fuel it up myself. I do go inside and bag my own ice and come back out and dump it in. I'll take the trash and throw it out to the curb. I'll chalk the plane some places. You never know. There's some FBOs that are run like a Formula One pit crew, and there's some other places you're just like, dang, dude, where'd everybody go? And now there's also a hiring problem, right? We haven't even talked about that. I've been to a bunch of FBOs where the manager I'm friends with will say, I'm having a hard time having guys stay committed to come to work. They're getting paid X amount of dollars to stay at home now. So the attrition rate of keeping your employees on staff could also greatly affect your FBO, line guy performances.
So I was going to ask you that question. What impact has the pandemic and these staffing issues in general have had on service at FBOs you've visited over the past year and a half?
A lot of them. Everybody can blame due to the pandemic. They'll say it with this accent of, that's why I did a bad job. But I can never say that. Due to the pandemic, I had to land the airplane like crap, or I just decided to not show up. I don't get away with it. So we hear all the time, the fuel. I'm like, I was in an FBO recently, and it took 3 fuel trucks to get me 1,500 gallons in the G4. So really, why not take one truck and have one guy go top that thing off so it's ready to go for the next Gulf Stream that comes in here? You know, the Phenom only takes 300 gallons. But
have you seen service decline and that's just an excuse, or is it the same and that's an excuse?
The don'ts will always use anything they can to not do something. So due to COVID was a great, oh yeah, I was on my phone. The other thing is, guys stay active with some of the other things that they're not focused intently on the job, or they just drop the ball. There's a difference in the environment with wherever you go with how they raise their people. Some people are just super attentive and on top of their game, and I think that has to do with the leadership. Because if you get a leader that's showing up and he's working, he's doing it, it's addictive. Other guys want to work and do stuff. Like when I'm flying with other guys, they all want to come to get together, go out to dinner, go play golf, go to here, go flying. It's just you're either causing a wake and you're showing people that to keep that energy going, or you're somebody that's just laid back and everybody else also catches that too. Like in our pilot world, we have that like let's say you have a group of pilots, you got 20 of us, and inside of our group, if we got this one hotshot pilot that's just running everything like Top Gun-ish, Maverick, just going outside, like I like to find the box and I'll explore the outer edges of that box a lot, but to stay on the outside of the box, you're starting to use up your bag of luck. If you're constantly stay on the outside using up your bag of luck, other guys start to see that and they come that way. So it's like the erosion happens even within the flight department. Same thing with line guys. If you get one line guy is just not into it, not doing it, it starts to pull down every good guy. But if you get one good line guy manager, there's this guy at Meridian. He always stands out. I don't even know his name. I do know his name. I just forgot. But every time I go there, this guy is just smiling. He's, fuel truck's coming. This is coming. What else do you need, man? He's like that kind of guy. And he's changed the people that are also working there to also be like that. I've seen a huge difference. It's just from that one guy's attitude. So if you get an FBO gets one, shining star line guy, which I think you could probably build that too by really pouring into that one guy. And it's the training. I'll even take as, a line guy when I see them, like, hey, put the pins in? No. Come here, let me show you. And I'll show them the pins. I'm like, you do this pin stuff. If you come knock this stuff out when I drop my door and you throw my pins in, you're getting a 20 spot. It gives me reasons to tip these guys. And then that guy realizes, I knock this out, do this out, and I share it with the next guy. All those little things make a difference. There was another question I wanted to get to. Jennifer,
Jen's question.
What was the best, most efficient FBO experience you've had and why? The guys like we were just talking about there that understand the airplane really. So it's can be airplane specific. The little Phenom's new to me, but a GPU, I got to have that thing. Otherwise I don't get cold AC. The guy who brings me the GPU and understands voltages, I love that guy. I instantly throw him a 20 or 40 bucks because he knows I got to have 18. I got to have 28 volts. If they turn this thing on and they don't set it to 1100, they just don't fully understand the equipment and they don't set me right. They're also scared to break my airplane. They're scared to break their equipment. They're scared. So FBOs that have properly trained their guys about each aircraft and how they work, those give me the best experiences because I can rely on that. Sometimes I have to have them plug this baby in, and I got to run inside and get stuff done: paperwork, flight plans, catering. Some of the catering requests from passengers, they're getting harder and harder. They want very specific type of foods. And all of a sudden it's like, yo, guy, why would you ask me for that? I'm like, 30 minutes. But sometimes, hey, guys, I got to leave the airplane running like this. Keep your eye on it. I'm running over to Chick-fil-A to get this guy 2 market salads, and I'll be right back. And it's, believe it or not, that's a part of the FBO team. And I think as a pilot, I'm expecting them to understand that that's what I got to do to go please this guy. And this customer will never complain about the bill. It's, boom, here's your credit card. I pay the bill. I'm gone. And you'll see there's a different variant clients. You've got the super, super high-end clients that want to show up with 5 Suburbans rolling up to the 550, and you got other easy guys that show up with flip-flops and shorts. A great FBO is the one that recognizes that whole gamut of clientele and can easily morph into whatever that guy needs. If he's rolling through the FBO in shorts and flip-flops, you want a bottle of water on the way out? You instantly recognize that service. You recognize why pay $400 a night at Ritz-Carlton versus spending $150 at a Garden Inn or something like that. You see the difference in that service. You expect that level of service. That to me is what I'm looking for experience. Like we'll pay more money to go to a specific FBO if that service is good, if it's known to be good. So I think as an FBO manager, FBO owners, you guys want to strive to have that level of service of like, this is our normal. And then we also go above that normal in certain aspects. If you have nice crew cars for us, to me, that makes me feel like you appreciate me. I'm just a nobody, but I do have the control to say I'm going to go over here or go over there, which I think about 90% of the pilots have that control. Even if I'm on a 135, I can call my dispatcher and say, hey, listen, you sent me over this FBO last time and send me over to here. Oh, well, the fuel's 10 cents more. I don't care. We're going to pay for it over there. Let's go. I want to try that one out. So that's that teamwork thing of getting experience or getting experience.
That right there is a great point, is that the service can win the business.
Bingo.
One of the things Jeff mentioned was, this customer service. How do you give this customer service? We have these staffing problems. We're pressed for time. Again, I'm going to lean on the technology here and say that with what we're doing, one of the biggest goals I had, I was at Landmark Aviation in Miami for quite some time. And, that's a busy place. What got very frustrating for me, and one of the biggest things behind the creation of X1, is that I couldn't stand the fact that my CSRs had to spend so much of their time at the front desk with their head down, feeding a system. It was very labor intensive. We didn't want that labor intensive. We want, my CSRs couldn't interact with the pilots. They couldn't have that conversation. They couldn't create the relationship because what we used, our tools, required so much work. So we tried to build what we built in a way that really addresses that provides that freedom. And then we're constantly looking for more ways to free up that time to create those service experiences Jeff is talking about, to be able to pay attention enough to create those experiences. One of the things we're working on right now, and this is a future thing, we're testing it out now, is the device you see on the screen. And the concept behind it is that even our vendors, and this is more for some of the busy places. I mean, it's funny, I say busy places, but a busy place could be a giant FBO that has 3 people that are constantly, jumping around. A busy place can be a smaller FBO that has just one CSR that's doing 10 different things. So it's not just size, it's how the business is being managed and how it's running that we can help. What we're working on here is something called I'm Here. And what it allows is those third-party services that FBOs depend on and handlers exist off of, is to self-check-in. Things like I can show up at the FBO with my catering delivery from Silver Lining. I can go into this app. I can scan that QR code, check in, tell everybody I'm here. That information. Now this driver just checked in. Normally what we have, let's use a driver as an example. A driver checks in, signs on a sheet so we know he's there to pick somebody up. With what we've done here, that driver's information then can get populated to everybody. It can go to it goes into X1. X1 can see that the transportation we have reserved for this aircraft has been checked in. The guy's here. We can then send that guy a text message when that airplane's X number of minutes out saying, hey, your aircraft's about to pull up at the gate. That, and it's that automation, that kind of stuff that we're trying to introduce here that's going to allow us that time to make it easier to meet those pilots' needs, anticipate and react to expectations, especially in an environment that, like today, where we're having a hard time finding and keeping people on the ramp.
Hey, Jim, I think it's an awesome idea to put something that passengers can also download. I was saying that a while back to Meridian about having a passenger experience.
Yep. So
FBOs also can take advantage of that as another profit center. Even for me, like we're busy, I need a 6-pack of Coca-Cola. It's going to take me an hour to run to Walmart and go get it. I think if I owned an FBO, I would have a storehouse back there where I would have, snacks and chips and some basics, things like that, and then it's another area where pilots can learn to lean on, like a total another crutch that's not taken advantage of, that if you built it.
It's funny you say that. We actually have an application we built that's at a few FBOs called Cafe that allows the FBO to get away from vending machines. It allows them to set up with their caterer some real fresh food that can then be self-service and bought directly from these kiosk machines, that a pilot can come in instead of getting some chips out of the vending machine, he can get a nice fresh parfait that was dropped off by the caterer in the morning. And they, stock supplies and stuff like that, we're actually doing that stock supply thing at an FBO out in California now with that same device, so that the pilots and crews can walk in. They can go to that device, grab a couple things, scan them, and walk out to restock the airplane. So that's actually something we're working on right now. That should be by, I think at that FBO in California, we should have it by wintertime.
Yeah, that'd be cool. You know, I learn a lot from the passengers. If I spend time talking to them to see what they think and perceive, they really think and perceive that the FBO does everything. Like the FBO cleans the plane, the FBO washes it, the FBO will put air in your tires. That's their mindset.
I tell you, I feel like we do that a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so many areas that, you know, we can continue to capitalize on and enhance. You know, like I think you were touching on ordering food and stuff through that X1 thing. I know hundreds of passengers that I've flown that would definitely like download an app and say, "Hey, order whatever you want to eat right there, and it'll be delivered for you at the FBO." Kind of like an Uber Eats, if you will. There's tons of reach there. You've got.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity for us. You know, you mentioned about connecting to passengers. I think that's I go to that grandpa example. I want to let grandpa know his granddaughter is sitting here at the aircraft, and I think for pilots that takes a lot of the burden off. Now, as an industry, we always talk about how we do things. So, you know, I don't think there's ever been a webinar in aviation history that didn't have a damaged airplane in it. It's like standard fare. You know, the first thing we take care of when the aircraft gets there is what we just talked about. It's about the passenger. What do they need? Getting them those 5 Suburbans, getting them out the door. Once we're done with that component of the arrival, we move on to the pilots. What do they need? Let's get you your fuel. Let's get you anything you need. Let's get you to the hotel. The next thing, the final thing we handle, once that's all said and done, is we put that airplane to bed. Now, this is, you know, I go back to the customer experience part of what we were talking about. There is nothing worse in customer service as damaging an aircraft. You know, and there's some things that, again, I'm going to throw the technology at it. There's some things we think we can do here to help that. There's some things that we're doing in X1. We have the ability within our single point app. We can do arrival inspections. I can walk around an airplane. I can even, you know, we can even set it up so you can take pictures of an airplane so that, you know, you can mark damage. Think about if that aircraft damage database was shared. So if an aircraft was damaged and a trip to Bozeman and then gets to Opa Locka and they tell the FBO in Opa Locka that, hey, you know, my static wick is broken, we can go refer to that database, that information that we have on an aircraft that says, you know, they caught that on a walk around on arrival in Bozeman. So it didn't happen here. And I can't tell you how many times in FBO I paid for damage that wasn't ours. You know, and all of that, it leads to poor service experiences. I'm gonna pop in our last poll here, and a lot of us have been in the FBO business on these calls. What, you know, I want you to give me one word, and I guarantee a lot of us have had to make that phone call. When an aircraft is damaged on your watch, you've gotten the information and knew you had to make that phone call. So give me one word for that feeling you get when you either get the phone call, that guy walks up and says, sir, there's been some damage. What's the one word that comes to your mind when we talk about that? I'll tell you mine once everybody gets a chance to drop theirs in. So so we've gotten I like Caroline's. I can't repeat it, but I like it. So Chris Perry says sick. Jason says sick. Joe says sinking feeling. Jen says preventable. Mike says sinking. Caroline says, oh shit. I said it anyway. Archie doesn't have words for it. You know, Jen Massey sweating, deflated. It's a horrible, horrible feeling when you know you have to have that phone call, when you have to call that owner and tell them it's the worst customer experience possible. Now, I'm going to introduce a guy whose entire job it is to make sure we don't do those things, to make sure that, we don't have to have that conversation with these owners, understanding and studying what goes on in the industry, what goes on in the ramp, and how, as an industry, we can prevent these kinds of accidents. And Mike France, who's part of NATA, is going to talk to us about those challenges and how NATA is using technology to help address those challenges. Mike, I'm going to give you the floor. All yours.
Well, I appreciate it, Jim. This is a fantastic discussion we're having so far. And, I've been looking at the comments, and I think it was Monica a little while ago talked about, company culture being everything. And really, I think when we back up just a little bit, everything we're talking about here is changing the culture of an industry. You go back to that picture of yourself back in ~95. We've all got pictures like that floating around somewhere, right? That was back in the day of the ramp rat or the line. What's the last one I heard? Fuel boy and things like that being thrown around. Ground handling has always kind of been viewed as just kind of like, it's something anybody can do, right? It's something anybody can do, everybody can do. Pilots say, hey, yeah, I was once a ramp rat myself. That's how I started at that end. But I think what we're seeing in our industry now, and what folks like you guys at X1, what we at NATA and Safety First, and many other people in our industry are trying to do, is drive that cultural change and realize that ground handling is an integral component of our industry and how we operate. Jeff, you mentioned earlier, talking about where the lines are, and really when we hear you talk about it, what you're looking for is a partner on the ground, right? You're not just looking for a vendor, somebody that you're going to come in and swipe a credit card and get a couple services. You want somebody that takes your business, your operation, your passengers, and your aircraft as seriously as you do. And so there's a lot of ways, our industry is working to accomplish that. I started off by jotting down a few items of, what's driving safety in our industry, but I wanted to circle back first to, I added my fourth one, and that's workforce. You talk to any FBO operator, and you probably talk to pilots. You go to FBOs, you don't see the same people for long. Some FBOs I've talked to experience upwards of 35 to 40% turnover in a single year on their ramp. COVID has exacerbated that, right? We're in a situation right now where, we've created an environment where some people aren't returning to the workforce as fast as we would like. Bars and restaurants are increasing pay, and now, as an FBO, you're competing with all these different areas. So what's happening? What we're seeing is companies are saying, you know what, we've got to take this workforce thing seriously. We need to take our employees seriously, and we need to figure out how to give them a culture and an environment that's going to make them want to stay and make them want to be part of something. And so I think that's the first area I wanted to talk about today, and what we're doing with leveraging technology. You've all probably heard of the NATA Safety First, our online training, our training program. Back in Jim's day and in my day, it started with a stack of 9 VHS video cassettes. You remember those, right, Jim?
Sure do.
Yep, we all, most of us have been through that. We went online in 2008. Well, we just released a brand new edition of our training program, and what we tried to do in that is to really, again, leverage technology to create a better experience, a better training environment, and output for FBOs, and then I'll kind of tell you where we want to go with that from there. The old video cassettes, right? Hour and a half long, hour and 45-minute long video you pop in and watch. And I remember the first guy I ever trained using a video. I had the great intention of sitting there and working through it with him and answering questions. Of course, what happened, something on the ramp and you've got to run back out. And I think I walked back up about 20 minutes later and his head's laying back and he's snoring and the video's playing. Not the best learning environment, right? We went online in 2008 and we at least solved that problem, right? You couldn't fall asleep. The training would just stop and wait for you to wake up. But it was still this really long, intensive thing. You got hired at an FBO. Sometimes they didn't even start your training because they didn't want to pay for it until they knew you were going to stick around for a while. But same environment, right? It was a long down for 3 or 4 days, go through all this. So what we've tried to do now is leverage the technology in a learning management system, right? A piece of software designed to allow an FBO to manage its training and manage its employees. what our team members, what we've done is we've taken these big long courses and we've broken them down into really small, digestible pieces, and we allow FBOs to put them together and mix and match them in the ways that works for their employees. Instead of having things like single expiration dates that incentivize people to just hurry up and get something done, print out a certificate, we work on ratings with each of these courses that make up ratings having its own expiration date, meaning when recurrency comes around, it's not all going to come due at once. We're going to create this continuous training environment. We've added tools, more and more tools for trainers and students to realize that the online portion of training is only a small portion, right? What really happens out on the ramp, that on-the-job training, we utilize something we call the structured training model, which we have a seven-step approach to on-the-job training. And for every single course we have that has an on-the-job training component, we have a resource guide that can help trainers and help students understand what they should be doing, what they should be looking at, what they're going to be learning, and what the safety concerns are. So we're really excited about this new the Safety First Training Center. And as we continue to move forward over the next couple of years, we're going to leverage that technology to give FBOs, ground handlers, charter operators, everyone tools to provide I heard somebody describe it as cradle to grave for their employees, to give their employees a pathway moving forward, right? If you come in and start on the line, if you feel like this is it, I'm not going anywhere in this company, you're going to be looking around. What are you going to be looking for? You're going to be looking for that next salary level or that next job that's interesting. However, if you're at an organization with a great culture that's investing in you as an individual and as a leader and giving you a pathway to grow, you're much more likely to stay. So that's one kind of piece of that cultural change that we're talking about. Another one, and I'll just keep talking here. So Jim, don't hesitate to just like cut me off and say, hey, I got a question, or somebody has questions. I'll do it because me, I could talk for an hour and a half.
Feel free. And if anybody does have questions, please drop them in the chat. We'll ask Mike as he breathes.
Yeah, I'm seeing other things here. Somebody talking about shack versus line office. All different kinds of the terminology. That's one thing I am really happy to see. You don't hear the term ramp rat thrown around a lot at FBOs anymore. 15 years ago you did. And so we are making a change, and the more we're all able to work on this together and align, our vision and work as partners, aircraft operators, pilots, FBOs, mechanics, and realize that, let's break down these silos in which each group thinks they're the most important part, and realize that we're all an integral component, the better off we're going to be. So one of the things, misfueling, Jim, you brought that up earlier. You said, how is it after all these years that we still continue to kill people by putting the wrong kind of fuel in the wrong airplane or the wrong quantity or something along those lines? And I want to back up 1 second, because one of the things that I always use when I'm training folks out on the ramp, because we do our Safety First on-site where we actually go out and do training, is, most of the tasks we perform in ground handling, when viewed kind of just in a very narrow perspective of that task, aren't particularly difficult, right? Fueling an airplane is not tremendously difficult. Yeah, there can be different variations, so on, but it's pretty easy to do it once, to get it right, and do it safely. The issue comes when you've got to do this 10,000 times over 5 years in varying weather conditions with all kinds of different aircraft and time demands and personal issues and all these things going on. And so I think it's really important that we remember that this is not necessarily, while it seems simple, the challenge is being able to repeat this task over and over and over and over again. And so that comes back to fuel. And we talk about fuel. There's a growing awareness and actual, I think, involvement in fuel quality from aircraft operators. And Jeff, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this as we go forward, with the DEF contamination issues that have been occurring over the last 4 or 5 years. I hear a number of aircraft operators and FBOs telling me that they're hearing from pilots and aircraft operators saying, hey, talk to me about how you guys are managing quality, how you're ensuring safety. Are you, Jeff, are you seeing kind of a increase in attention to fuel from pilots and aircraft operators?
Yeah, because that's scary crap, man. If you have engine blowouts on takeoff, that's everything you've trained for. You don't want to put it down in a highway or a field. So I'm always watching the fuel truck. I'll ask the fuelers, hey, when's is the fuel truck up to date? You've had a water sample. I've had water in my fuel before, and it causes problems. I had a huge fuel imbalance in the G550 flying over to Doha, and I had whatever that water was frozen there, prevented the fuel from transferring, migrating properly, and I had to land the airplane, one engine up on power, the other one at idle, and that actually caused more implications for me because even Gulfstream was coming after me as like pilot error. The operator had to kind of hinge it on you. So there's a lot of ramifications when it comes to the fuel. It's that critical.
Yeah.
So I personally go check the truck. Who topped it off? Let me see the signature. I want to know about it. Has there been a water sump done today?
And that's what we see across the industry, right? Aircraft operators are now paying more attention. Previously, it was just kind of assumed, especially in jet fuel, right? If you're a turbine operator, there didn't appear to be a lot of threats to your aircraft from the fuel. We have a pretty modern system. We're not getting off spec fuel and things like that. But now with the DEF issue, I think it is drawing that attention back. And one of the things that everyone's amazed by is that it's 2021, and our primary method for managing fuel quality is notebooks, paper, clipboards, pens, and stacks of files. If Jeff wants to know when the last time, or wants to take a look at a record, just say, hey, before you fuel, can I take a look at the record of your fuel truck for the last month? He's going to be walked into the line office. He's going to be handed a clipboard, and on that clipboard, there's going to be 30 some rows with lots of marking and different handwriting. And if Jeff has had enough experience at it, he might be able to interpret what all that means and get some kind of an idea. For those of you all that are on the line on this webinar today, a lot of you probably operate or oversee operations at a business, and the question that I would have for you: what's the status of your fuel quality system right now? And there's two ways to know. Go look at the binders, pull them off the shelf, get the clipboard, stack them in front of yourself, and spend an hour digging through them. Or go ask somebody you trust. Neither one of those are the best options. So one of the things NATA is really excited to have launched a couple years ago is our fuel quality management system. So it is a digital tool to replace the pen and paper method of managing fuel quality. We're not changing the requirements, right? ATA 103 is still the spec. But imagine this now: instead of taking your clipboard out to your fuel trucks in the morning to do your inspection, you take your iPad. All right, you come to the first truck, you pull it up. The system walks you through your inspections. All right, what do you got to check first? Filter sump, tank sump, so on and so forth. Meanwhile, as you're recording all of these items, the system is logging exactly where you are using its GPS and system. So it's not just date and time stamp, but location stamp. Later on, if somebody's going back and reviewing these records, they can see you were actually standing out at the fuel truck. But another example, you come up with something, a static reel, right? You got a broken static reel, and you got to mark that up on your iPad. Instead of it just being a C on one of those columns, 30 columns, and one of those different items. Now, what you've done is you've created an open maintenance item within the fuel quality management system. And as soon as you hit submit for that first inspection, the system recognizes there's a maintenance item open. It opens a maintenance log item, notifies the appropriate people that, hey, we've got an open maintenance item, especially if it's not severe. It just says, hey, you got an open maintenance item. But let's say it is something that is severe that removes the truck from service. The system lets you know, hey, this is a serious maintenance issue that's going to remove this truck from service. It's going to create an alert that goes out to all the appropriate people at your organization. So I could talk for an hour and a half about the FQMS. It is the next generation of managing fuel quality. The question I hear is, as Jim pointed out at the beginning, is people always say, "Well, if pen and paper is working, why should I use this?" And that is that kind of, well, this seems to work good enough. The question is a couple things. Number one, a digital system gives you that transparency throughout your entire operation. If I owned an FBO or was managing an FBO, to me, fuel is one of my number one commodities that I'm selling, and it also presents a giant risk to both my operation long term and my customers. Not being able to know were the QC checks done this morning? And if so, what was the result? Not being able to look at the maintenance logs for my truck and see what's the time frame from items being identified until the maintenance team is actually repairing them. How long is that taking? How long are things remaining out of service? All of that you can't get with paper. You can get it with the digital system. The other thing you can get with the digital system is automation that looks over records, that identifies trends, that identifies problems, and lets you know before they actually become a problem that you might have something going on. So that's another way we're leveraging technology, is through pushing the fuel quality management system. And if you have questions as we go forward on that system, I'd be happy to answer them here, or we can always talk offline.
That's pretty cool, Mike. So something like rising differential pressures, it'll start to point it out.
Absolutely, yeah. It's going to identify that you've got something going on here, and you're something unpredicted happened. It's going to flag that and let the end users and the appropriate people know. Um, the, uh, the the things you can get with a digital system are just fantastic. You know, if something's broken, you can take a photograph of it with your iPad, append that to the maintenance log, and now that maintenance item is going to remain open. For those of you guys that have ever done QC inspections, the one thing that will just drive you nuts is you pull out that inspection log, and you see on Tuesday the 7th, this item was marked as a comment, meaning there was a problem, and there's no comment written anywhere as to exactly what was wrong. And the next day, it was marked satisfactory. And as an auditor or a business owner or a manager, you're going, well, what happened? What was broken? What was done to fix it? Well, the digital system will hold that item open, hold that maintenance log open, require an entry as to what's going on, and hopefully also append a photo to it. So it's really, really cool stuff.
So I'm going to throw something in there from an FBO perspective, where this where it comes in handy from just time and effort. Having that information organized, neat, and clear, I can tell you, is a world of difference when an auditor walks into your FBO. The amount of time they spend on you and your operation is a fraction of what if your records were a mess. Even if you go, I've seen places with nothing, just piles of papers like this, and I've seen FBOs with really neatly organized books. This is another level. This is where questions can be asked remotely, information sent. This will save tons of your time and effort.
Yeah, think about an auditor when they walk into your FBO. What's the first thing they ask for? All right, give me your records, and they go sit down at a table, and they take all the stacks of binders and clipboards, and they spend an hour and a half reviewing, calling people in to ask questions. What is this? I can't read that. What does that mean? And so on. With the digital system now, the auditor can actually do the paperwork portion of the audit before they ever show up at your facility. They can do it from the comfort of their own desk, review the paperwork with your permission, of course. They can do that, and then when they show up on site, they're actually focused on things that are going to make a difference in the operation. Right? They're going to spend time. They're going to be more risk based as they get there. Jeff is going to be flying into an FBO he's never been to before, doesn't know anything about their fuel quality. He says, man, I really would like, it would make me feel a little more comfortable knowing kind of where they are. With a digital system like the fuel quality management system, Jeff can call the FBO and say, hey, can I get a auditor access for a day to be able to take a look at your fuel records? And from his iPad, as he's sitting in the FBO getting ready to take off, or wherever, he can be able to log in, review those records, and feel more assured, or say, hey, you know what, I'm going to make sure I want to be there when they're fueling. There's a little higher risk here at this FBO than I think I'm willing to tolerate. So it's about making information available. Jim, you talked about that data. Getting it into a form where it can be easily disseminated out to the people who need it at the moment that they need it. So I see Jeff, you've said, how does one get a username and log into the Fuel QC? You can go to our website. You can request a demo, and we'll kind of walk you through it. You can shoot me an email. You can give me a call. We can talk about it. We've got a lot of resources on the website, www.nata.aero, AERO. And we're continuing to do all kinds of upgrades. And trust me, the system is way more full featured than I've talked about already. But, so the last thing, because I don't want to just eat up all the time here, what's driving safety. So we talked about fuel and fuel safety. We've talked about workforce. The other one that I kind of wanted to touch on is loss in premiums, right? Ground handling loss. Yeah, I've been involved in damaging an aircraft before. It's a sickening feeling. It's just as sickening a feeling when you're the owner and you got to write the checks to fix those, right? Or now you got to pay premiums. For those of you that are involved in your insurance side, the past 2 or 3 years, you're seeing skyrocketing premiums for FBOs and ground handlers. That's going to continue for the next 3 to 4 years. And NATA, part of our mission is how do we empower our members to be able to respond to that? Right now, the insurers, the underwriters have all the information and all the power, because what is going on is we all are monitoring safety in different ways. Some people are doing a great job of it. Others are not doing as good of a job. The one thing we're all doing terrible at is sharing that information. If you're a pilot and a 135 operator or 121 operator, you're probably at least once in your career already have probably shared information through a SIAS or through an ASAP program. These are programs for aircraft operators that gather data from multiple different sources. They do it in a kind of a de-identified, protected, private way, and allow the industry as a whole to take a look at, safety from a perspective that otherwise would be completely impossible. And that up to now is something we have not been doing in our industry. NATA Safety Committee, that's been a high priority. And we are working hard towards creating programs that will allow us to collect and share data across the industry. As a matter of fact, pay attention next week. Later next week, there's going to be a big announcement from NATA regarding this. I can't tell you about it right now. Our marketing team or messaging team, communications people will be rather upset with me, but there's a lot going on there. And, the last piece here is as, SMS regulations come around, as 135 and maybe even other turbine operators are starting to be required to comply with, the FAA's Part 5 and SMS requirements. That's going to push down to FBOs, because part of SMS is about knocking down those silos and realizing that, a collaborative partnership approach to safety, is the only way forward. So, Jim, I just want to thank you for hosting this, for talking culture change in our industry, for creating this, kind of portal to be able, or not portal, but platform to be able to talk about it. And, if you guys are enjoying this, check out our website, look at our events, our ground handling safety symposium this fall. Jim is already going to be a featured speaker there. We got a lot of folks that are going to be in talking ground handling safety. So thanks for the time. I'll take any questions and I'll be quiet now.
I want to add one comment in regards to the insurance premiums. It's kind of like a shout out. I think Fontainebleau may not know that they're actually doing this. They're doing it, but they don't really know with a bigger picture. I think they have a process that it works they're doing it once in a while, but sometimes it's not fully reliable. But if everybody catches on to this process, I think it'll help reduce the insurance premiums and the claims. When you fly in there, 50-50, you come up and you pull underneath the awning. And when you pull into the awning, they're timing you for seeing when the next airplane's coming in to get you out of the airplane or whatever service you need right there, and then pull the airplane. They tug the airplane to a parking spot. And I've been watching that happen, and it happens to me, I'd say about 50% of the time. I'll land, they pull me in. Can I get you this, that? And they'll say, I got 5 minutes. We got a Challenger coming in. They do it with the Challenger. And then something happens. It gets backed up. They got too many airplanes in that spot, and they no longer do it. But I was thinking, what a great process that is, because if that was a given, like I just know that I pull up to spot one, they give me what I got. They have a tow team. The guy comes up with the tug, Electro. He's there ready to pull us out of there. They're getting this momentum and this experience of moving our airplane. So they're going to be versed in the Gulfstream and the Falcon and the Phenom and the Hawker and have that experience with it. I think that's going to reduce the amount of incidents that the FBOs have because of the amount of practice they have. They're getting daily practice. Plus, pilots are getting used to just going to that one spot, not having to deal with the FBO line guide dance or having to taxi down between rows of airplanes, or, you're looking because you're like, all right, where do I go? You're trying to make this real quick. I think since we have so many FBO managers starting to jump in these forums, and hopefully as you do more of these forums, Jim, we get more FBO managers in here so we can guide the industry that way. That's going to bring our exposure down to have a standard structure, like a Formula One pit crew. I pull into what do they call that lane when you get to the pit lane? Pull into pit lane. I pull into my spot. There's my flag, and I'm gone.
I'll tell you what. Let me, let's see if we can get Mike a little excited here. We've actually, we did a demo. We created a bit of demo software a couple of years ago using a VR headset to actually move airplanes. There's talk about training and stuff like that. And this is not a today thing. This is one of the things that, we're looking at. We've kept an eye on it for a little while. We think there's probably still a little more work to be done in the VR space before it's really useful. But imagine if they moved your airplane 25 times before they ever touched it. That's the kind of stuff. That's one of the directions the industry needs to head in. And actually, Emil wants to know when version 3 is coming, Mike.
Version 3 of Safety First?
Of is it the fuel management or quality control?
I'm not. I guess I maybe expand on that question. I'm not really sure what you mean by version 3.
I guess your next update is probably the right thing, right? Right, Emil? Next update?
Yeah, we've got some updates to the Safety First training program that came out today. They're small ones. We've got new content coming out all the time. That's the other side, as you talked about, Jim. It's constantly the evolution. We've built a system both in the FQMS and in the Safety First Training Center now that are designed to be able to evolve. Our previous systems were pretty fixed, and I see now it says the FQMS. So that's a constant evolution. I unfortunately do not have the dev list in front of me, so I don't know what the next steps are. But I know that system is constantly adding new features and new. There's Jeff and his video now.
I'm landing right now, guys. I'm all about the training. So I love that idea, dude. If we have more line guy training, and it was simple and cool and easy, and they were able to get all that stuff beforehand, that'd be amazing.
So and it's great. This is the perfect segue because the next part we're going to get into is actually the equipment. If you look at those accidents, I don't know if you have a number off the top of your head, Mike, but out of our accidents, everything that occurs, what percentage of them do you know, if you know, occurred during towing? I know it's the vast majority.
So it's really hard to give you. It is that's about as tightly as I could define it. The vast majority of loss incidents that we see are towing and aircraft movement related. Unfortunately, this is another area where even the insurers and the underwriters, you would think they would have amazing data on all this. It turns out they don't. Everybody records things differently to different layers of granularity. And so we really believe this is something where we're excited about. And like I said, pay attention next week. You'll see some stuff about data that I think is really exciting. So be talking.
Speaking of that, next I'm introduced a good old friend back from Rod. I remember when he first started doing his little U.S. tour with a GPU he invented down in Australia many years ago, which is a staple on ramps.
Oh, I think we're getting a little bit of trouble. Can anybody hear me?
Can you guys hear me?
It was glitching there, but I can hear you.
Yeah. So Rod was Rod invented the JetGo a lot of years ago. He's been with Aerospace for a while. They're working on some really cool things like with something called SIPS Hitch, which is a towing solution. It's going to help us make sure we're not we're not breaking the airplanes. I mean, look at the ramp. Look at that. That's when I started. Again, we're talking a long time ago. I remember we didn't have it, but the FBO next to us had the electric tugs back then. That fancy electro, but it was electric. We were making fun of it because it was electric. I wouldn't run a ramp now without an electric tug. And I think things like, I don't know if you have them on. I did talk to like Mototug and guys like that, guys that are creating some of these robotic tugs now that you can actually move an airplane with two people and see all four corners of it. You know, there's a lot, there's actually finally some innovation, and Rod is one of the guys leading this. I mean, he's the guy that reinvented the GPU, basically. Gave us something simpler and easier and better to use on the ramp. So I'm gonna let Rob talk a little bit about what Aerospace is doing and what they think the technology on our equipment, how that's going to change over the next couple of years. Because again, we're going to see a big change there too. Rod, it's all yours.
Yeah, hey Jim, thank you, and thanks for the invite. I'll never forget rolling into I think it might have been Landmark at the time at White Plains, 2011. Yep. I think I rolled in with a whole heap of equipment, one of them being the JetGo hybrid GPU back in the day, and you know, at first view of that small GPU, people thought it was a toy. But you know, over 1,000 units later and causing a few issues to Hobart, it's finally become quite the success. And I don't want to talk too much about the JetGo at this point in time, except to say that as a pilot myself, I used to have a flying training school in Queensland in Australia many years ago, and seeing what went on the ramp with ground power units and the hazards that can occur with ground power units. The idea behind that was really just to create a very simple system that I think simplicity is the key here for the line technicians. Some of them are not that well versed with mechanical equipment and understand how to use them correctly. So having a simple on-off and having some advanced protection systems in there to protect the aircraft is also important. One of the nice features of the JetGo product, which is unique to JetGo, is the fact that it does have hybrid batteries. And even our most current model, which is much, much larger, much bigger, and much more powerful than the previous models, and it was developed as a result of the Tier 4 final engine requirement. But that unit still has the hybrid battery. So if the GPU should run out of fuel at the worst possible moment during a turbine start, the batteries will still do that turbine start. So you're not going to have a hot or a hung start. The FBO is not going to end up having major issues, and you know, people are not going to end up with egg on their face. So that's the JetGo. You know, JetGo being simple to operate, simple to maintain, which is another important feature. And our current model that we've just produced now is actually a 400 hertz. So we've now gone into 400 hertz as well. So we have a 45 kVA as well as the a 28 volt option on that model. So we have a pure 28 volt and the 400 hertz 45 kVA with 28 option. So don't want to talk too much about JetGo at this point in time. As the inventor of that product and joining Aerospace, who took over or bought my company, I've continued to develop products within the industry that I think have been developed out of necessity more than anything. And one of the latest, which I'm very proud of, is the SIPS Hitch product, which is a tow force monitoring system. It actually measures the forces that you're actually placing on the tow bar and the nose landing gear, the shear pins, etc., as you're pushing the aircraft. Now, I'm sure that nobody here, and actually it's good to see, I'm recognizing a few names of the participants, so it's really nice. I'm sure that no one here has ever pulled an aircraft with the brakes on. It just never happens. However, strangely enough, you know, we as a tug manufacturer, our company is now part of the TLV group. As a tug manufacturer, end up in lawsuits all the time about trying to explain why our tractor managed to pull the nose landing gear clean off a corporate jet. And it's never the operator's fault. It's always the tractor's fault because it just has too much power. Now, the fact remains that as corporate jets are getting larger, you know, the larger Gulfstreams and the Globals, we're needing larger tractors to be able to pull those aircraft safely and within the insurance parameters. Along with that comes the ability to severely damage equipment because of that power. And then when we go also to the electric units, which we manufacture and which are going to become a lot more prolific, during a tow, you're not going to be able to experience the load up of the diesel engine, or you're not going to hear the different load up signals when you're trying to pull an aircraft and it is chocked or it is braked or the brakes are grabbing as you're towing in a long distance tow. With the electric tractor having so much torque and silent operation, you are not going to know. SIPS hitch was developed to minimize those incidences, and it's retrofittable on any tractor. We fit it as an option to our TLD TMX range of tractors, and it has a screen in front of the operator. It also has an audible and visual warning, and the operator selects the aircraft that they're towing, and the system will measure the tow forces as you're moving that tractor. And if it gets to a certain percentage of a figure that is either created from the airframe manufacturer or a shear pin stress figure, it will actually remove the power from the tractor, reduce the power from the tractor. It'll also bring on alarms, audible and visual, and the operator can do something about it immediately. If they don't do anything about it, it will reduce the power on the tractor. So, for example, if you're pulling a Cirrus with this tractor that you're seeing on the screen now, which is a TMX 50, which has the capability of pulling 14,000 pound of drawbar pull. If you're pulling a Cirrus and it's braked, you're hardly even going to know with this tractor that you're overstressing. But if it senses any more than about 800 pounds on that SIPS hitch system, it'll take the power away from the tractor. So not only is it doing that, it is also providing data, and we were talking about data before. So if you go to the next slide, I think, Jim, you might be able to see maybe the next slide. It's the resolution's not very good. No, go another one. Go another one. Okay, so that's there we go. So the system is always recording data, which goes to a lockbox or a USB in a lockbox, and it comes up on an Excel style macro spreadsheet, and it provides data of the complete tow. So it'll give you the date, the name, the tail number of the aircraft, the time that you started and you stopped the tow, and all the forces that you actually exhibited on the aircraft during that tow. So you can do comparisons between different operators. Each operator can have, and it depends how you customize the system, it can be run in a very basic mode or a more complex mode, but each operator can have their own individual code that they then become accountable for the complete tow. And it can even be set up that if there is an overstress event, it can be set up so as only a supervisor can actually clear that overstress event and continue the tow. So it causes a junior operator or a line tech who's messed up to have to call the supervisor over and say, look, this is what happened. The brakes were grabbing or the brakes were on. The aircraft was chocked. I completely stuffed up, whatever it might be. And they can make sure that there's no damage to the aircraft and then continue the tow. So it captures that data as well. The other thing that we find with units that are equipped with this system is that, strangely enough, the operators become a lot smoother at towing, and there's a lot less incidences. So I mean, I don't like to think of it as Big Brother watching you so much, but it makes them more aware of what they're doing and to become a smooth tower. We see it all the time. I mean, we sell shear pins, we manufacture tow bars, we manufacture tractors. We get the blame for every incident that occurs on the ramp. We see what goes on, and it's amazing, particularly in regards shear pins, the amount of people who replace shear pins. But why did you replace a shear pin? You know, what actually happened? What damage could have been occurred? You know, when that shear pin was broken, and nobody really has ever asked that question, because up until now, no one has really known what forces they were placing on that nose gear when they were towing the aircraft. So that's the system in a nutshell. As I say, it can be equipped to any aircraft retrofitted, any tractor retrofitted to any unit. It's becoming quite popular. We're doing a large test with an airline over in Saudi at the moment, who are having major difficulties with a lot of their pushbacks. And on some of the larger airframes, if you do break a shear pin, in some cases, you got to deplane the aircraft and do a thorough check before that aircraft can be moved. So there's many cost saving advantages of this unit, but really it's a massive safety feature.
Yeah, the idea that our equipment is now getting smart.
Yeah, and look, you know, there's a lot of operators out there that yes, there are 3 or 4 presses of the touch screen that have to be done before you can actually tow the aircraft. And some of the operators, you know, we don't have time. I don't have time for that. If you don't have time for that, there's a major issue. You know, we're talking about 10 seconds. You know, no, we just got to get on the thing and go. If nothing else, it makes people just slow down, have a think about what they're doing, and you know,
I mean, if you're moving an airplane and you don't have 10 seconds, you're doing it wrong.
You got a major problem. One of the nice features that we've just included in this, and we're always updating the system, which is any of the new programs is easily downloadable. But one of the new features, before conducting the tow of the actual aircraft, you now have to select another screen or OK a screen, which comes up with the individual pins that need to be replaced or fitted before towing. So it makes the operator aware that they're on that particular aircraft. Hey, I've got to remove this pin, or I've got to put this pin in. You know, it's a nice feature as well. But you know, it can be set up so as there's additional walk around checks. You can have wing walkers entered into the system, so they're on the reports as well. Yeah, it's been a fun project. It's been a great project, but I think it's going to become a lot more prolific with the electric tractors because of the amount of torque that is available with those.
I had, you know, it's funny. I hadn't really thought about that lack of feedback when you're moving a aircraft with electric power. I know on the Electros, you get a little bit of feedback from the strap. You can hear the strap tightening up when you first move.
Yeah,
but you have to be in the right environment for that. This idea that you could do it almost automatically, that's pretty attractive.
Well, you know, Jim, you've been around a little while, and I think the first time that I met you sort of looked a little bit like that person in that picture that you first put up.
Not much. He was a lot skinnier.
You know, as an experienced operator, you can tell that. You can hear that. You can tell that when that strap is pulling, or you have a feel for it. But you put a junior operator on there, and when we get back to good times again, and I know that Florida pretty much is anyway, and you've got, you know, 12 or 15 guys on each shift, and you've got 3 shifts, you're going to have some junior guys on there that are jumping around that really need a system that protects them.
Yep, and this goes back to what we were talking about you know, the industry sharing that information, how we can impact our rates on insurance. I mean, this is a huge part of that. Mr. McBride mentioned in the questions too, a focus for line guys. You know, we'll have to wait and hear what NATA's announcement is going to be. But you know, the idea that as an industry we can take this information, all, you know, data, all these data points, start to share them to prevent incidents and to prevent things from happening is really where we want it to go as an industry, not just us as, you know, a software provider or a technology company. To me, this has always been more than just, you know, the business. I spent my entire career in this industry. Lived it, loved it, breathed it. So to me, it's a lot more important than just the idea that, you know, I'm selling something. We're trying to help. We're trying to change the industry. We're with Mike, with Jeff, a lot of you guys here on the call. What we're all trying to do is we're trying to make it easier to run the FBO. We're trying, you know, things like the NAT's QC program. Those are huge improvements. If you look at over the course of my career, just how much more difficult it has gotten to manage and operate an FBO. It's, you know, regulations have become more burdensome. Environmental, NFPA is a whole other topic. That's a whole nother call. NFPA. Inspections, local fire codes enforcement, USDA. I mean, when I was back up in White Plains, sometime around the time Rod, I think, came to visit, we had an issue where the USDA came and did an inspection and basically wanted to turn our line office into a restaurant because they decided we were serving food because of the catering. You know, it's those kind of regulations, regulatory creep that has made running our business much, much more difficult. And we need to find ways to not only use organizations like NAT to fight back, but to find more time and to provide solutions that we can address those things like that and manage other parts of our business. There's a level of complexity in this business that's awe-inspiring in general. And we have done a very poor job as an industry of adapting to that increasing level of complexity. I mean, a lot of our legacy systems are very complex. It's a legacy FBO software. Did what it did very well for a very long time. But I have actually lost employees, and this is years ago. I couldn't even imagine now. I've lost employees when I've tried to give them the legacy systems. When they look at a system that's so complex, you know, they're used to this. They're used to everything being on their phone, simple, easy. I don't need an instruction manual. I figure out what to do next. And you give them those complex, burdensome systems to operate in, and you get a negative reaction. It impacts our ability to keep and retain these employees too. So what we're trying to accomplish, what we want to do with these webinars, and what we want to do in general across the industry, you know, with groups like NATA, with, you know, ideas like what Rod is working on, give everyone access to the same information, have everybody reading off the same page, same playbook, and then feed that information out to the flight crews, to the FBO, to the line service technicians, even the passengers. We can use this technology to reduce our risk, things like the SIPS hitch, things like Single Point, our app. In our app, you can flick it to the side and it'll tell you what's going out tomorrow. Think about restacking a hangar. If you're restacking the hangar with all this information in your hand, so you know that this aircraft that's in the back is going out tomorrow, you're not going to stack the hangar and have to go restack it again 2 hours later. Every single time you move an airplane, you're introducing risk. There's a potential to damage it. The more we can minimize that, the lower the risk is. And again, as we start to collect this data and feed it up, I think we have an opportunity as an industry to have a big impact and gain some control over those insurance premiums we're paying. This webinar, we talked about it. We said it was a technology on the ramp. Really, at the end of the day, what this is all about is information, gathering that information and making it actionable. This is all about the information. The technology at the end is just enabling that part of it. We've done a lot of things to try and enable it. We have the X1 Single Point app. I don't know how many of you guys know, but we developed something called the X1 Cloud Connect. We actually created our own hardware. I have one here. It's a modem that we use on those digital registers like the LCIQ and the TCS 3000 that allows information to go back and forth. We'll be able to, in the very near term, if your truck is so equipped with something like the Murray tank gauges, to be able to do things like full-time fuel reconciliation. It's, again, leveraging the technology to create the automation to do things like improve safety, improve customer service. It's leveraging the technology to get the things done that we need done. And then there's the future. We talked very briefly about VR. We did some little experiment with VR. It was really cool. It did make me a little queasy because we didn't have it, perfect. I don't know if you've ever been in a VR headset. If you don't have them right, and I don't even get seasick, and it got me. But that device I just talked about, that's IoT, that's Internet of Things type hardware, and there's so much we can do with that. We're working on projects that are going to allow us to identify every aircraft you have in your ramp and exactly where it is, things like that. And it's a silly thing, But at busy FBOs or big FBOs geographically, you don't always know where every airplane is. It's a weird thing when somebody comes up, and I'm sure Jeff has done this. You walk up to an FBO and you ask where your airplane is. Okay, you have a $70 million airplane sitting on a ramp, and the guy says, hang on, let me find it. It's weird, but it happens. And we think we can leverage this technology to provide a lot of solutions to allow us to spend more time on the FBO itself. We do have like a few more minutes left. Does anybody have any questions? Anything we want to ask before we sign off here?
Well, since our buddy Rod is an inventor, Rod, I've been thinking that for the longest time, FBOs are going to come out with this hangar that reminds me of like the boatyard. If you go to the boatyard, they've got like, 10 boats stacked up high in this huge truck that puts up and away.
Yeah,
so
great idea.
Get on that, will you?
Yeah, great idea. I'll talk to my people about that. No problem. Yeah.
Well, I want to really thank everybody for joining us today. At the end of the day, what you're seeing on this screen right now is our primary message. We really think that we can use technology across the board, not just ours. Rods, NETAs with Mike, Fuel Links. Pick a company that's in the industry. Pick a company that's creating some of that data, some of that information. We think that that this technology can bring the change and create a safer, more connected environment for all of us. And that's our goal at the end of the day. If nobody has any questions, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank our participants, Jeff, Mike, Rod. We would greatly appreciate you guys stopping by and talking. I'd like to invite everybody to our final workshop for this series on cultural diversity at the FBO. It's an interesting topic. I mean, you think about us as an FBO and all the different types of clients we handle. We think about how diversity has become just much more of a topic these days. And, I use Mike's term, the stuff we did as ramp rats back in the day. You just can't, most of that stuff can't be done today. So we're going to talk a lot about that tomorrow and about how FBOs can be more cognizant of their customers and those customers' needs. So again, Jeff, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Rod, pleasure always to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Hope that Holden Commodore is still going well.
It is. It's fantastic. Only car I've ever bought that I don't plan on selling. I'm looking for a Corvette, but I'm still keeping the Commodore.
Good on you.
I'm going to wait the 19 years, and you're going to have to get me a Maloo when they can be shipped here.
No problem.
All right, everyone. Again, I thank you, everybody, for attending. We greatly appreciate it. If there's anything at all we can do, if there's any comments, questions, or anything, feel free to email me. You'll get a brief survey after this to let us know how we did. Again, thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks, guys.